So today we are going to be kind of talking about the future a little bit. Some will we ever questions. And the question for today is, will we ever hibernate in space? Now, I thought this was interesting for two reasons. One, the idea that humans can hibernate at all. I feel like that could be useful sometimes. But also this idea of hibernating in space, the idea that maybe if we want to continue to do things in space, to kind of explore space more, to maybe visit other planets, that this idea of hibernation might be something that we need to develop to help us do this as well. So I thought both aspects of this were kind of interesting. And hopefully we can have an interesting conversation about it on Thursday as well. But for today, let's get started and let's have a look at what the experts say about this. So, Nadia, would you like to read first today? Maybe she's lost her connection. Nadia, are you here? Would you like to read? Okay, I have a feeling maybe she has a connection issue. Yes. Okay, let's skip Nadia and we'll come back when maybe her connection's a little bit better. Oh, can anyone
Sorry, have you called me?
Yes.
It was it was breaking up, and I heard the last two letters of a name, and I said, no, this is not my name.
Maybe it was my connection. I thought it was maybe yours, but it looks like other people had an issue as well. So maybe it was my connection. So Nadia, would you like to read?
Of course, thanks God I managed to catch you before you changed. Okay. Will we ever hibernate in space? Taking astronauts to Mars or further will take years. Should they be put into hibernation on the way? There are some surprising health benefits. The year is 2039 and you are an astronaut on your way to Mars. You're only 3 months into the 8-month-long journey, and already your body is facing an onslaught of radiation from outer space. In zero gravity, your bones and muscles are at risk of wasting away. You are not worried, though, as you are about to enter your own private stasis booth. Cocooned inside, you'll blissfully sleep away the hours and days until you emerge fresh and rejuvenated at your destination. For a long time, a trope of science fiction stories, some scientists believed that human hibernation across the vastness of space could one day be possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this first part here. Questions, comments? Okay, onslaught. Here they talked about an onslaught of radiation. Okay. So, Fatima, do you know what onslaught means? Have you heard about it before? Okay. So this question is for me then. When we talk about an onslaught of something, it's probably, I would say, the idea of like an attack of something. Not slaught. If we say slaughter, would be about cutting something or killing something. But an onslaught of something is more, think about something arriving, like a big amount of things arriving, which is why I said an attack. So yeah, in this context, it would be a big amount of radiation hitting you, basically, or affecting you. So think about, the radiation off into the distance and it's kind of coming towards you and ready to attack you. No, actually, I'm not sure if onslaught is from. Okay, I just had a look online, and yes, so slaught is technically from slaughter. It does come. It does have that same idea. They do come from the same word, but slaught is more attack rather than kill. I guess slaughter is a little bit stronger because slaughter is about killing something. Onslaught is more like assault. Yeah. Or you can think about onslaught as like a big amount of something kind of arriving or doing something in the same time. So, for example, you could talk about an onslaught of passengers trying to get on the train, a very large amount of people. You could talk about an onslaught of messages if you started receiving a large quantity of messages all at the same time. You could talk about an onslaught of problems if you have a lot of problems that seem to happen all at the same time. So you can see that we generally try to use it with negative things as well. We don't generally talk about an onslaught of something positive. It's usually an onslaught, a large amount of negative things that are kind of arriving to us. Is that a little bit clearer for everyone now? Yep. Okay, great. Let's have a look at this phrase then. The private status booth. Okay, looks like this might be a question for everyone. Okay, another question for me today. Okay. Yeah, I think status, this is the confusing word here, right? Because booth, yeah, we've got other things. We can talk about a photo booth. We can talk about a booth is like a place that you can sit. A booth we can think of as being like an enclosed space somewhere, really. Status. No, sorry, not status. Stasis. Stats. Sorry, stasis. Let me pronounce it right. Stasis is kind of a scientific word. You've probably heard it as part of other words, to be honest, used in science. Because the idea of stasis is that there's like this state of inactivity or balance between two different things. So you've probably heard like a homeostasis, for example, when kind of all the systems in the body are like working the way they're supposed to. They're kind of like all in balance with each other. Okay. The stasis part of this is that part about balance, about everything being balanced, about everything kind of working how it's supposed to. In the sense here, because they're talking about a stasis booth, though, they're really talking about this booth that means everything kind of stops, that everything in the body kind of stops for a while, or that idea of hibernation. I think you made that word up, Constantine. I'm not sure that one exists, but I think you've got the right idea. Does that make sense for everyone now? Okay, great. Cocooned, okay. I don't know if it's exactly the same as hypnotism. Oh, my pronunciation is terrible today. Hypnotism. No, hypnotism. Oh, I think I need to stop talking. Deep breaths. Okay. I don't think it's exactly the same. I don't know. Maybe they both have the same idea of maybe slowing down some of the processes in the body. But I think hypnotism is more about like controlling the mind, whereas the hibernation, I think, is more about controlling like the body and the body functions. So I think they might be a little bit different. Maybe they could use hypnotism. I have to think about it now. Maybe they could use it to help people get into the hibernation. I'm not sure. But they're probably a little bit different. Okay. So let's go back then. Yeah, in both we would lose consciousness. Yes. Although maybe in hypnotism it's more about like an altered state of consciousness. And in hibernation, it's more just that you've slowed down all the body processes, so you're not conscious. So it might be for different reasons and in slightly different ways. Okay, cocoon. Yeah, a cocoon we can kind of think about as being as a capsule. So if you think about a cocoon, it's like that stage between when a caterpillar is changing into a butterfly, if you think about it that way. So like this, we have the caterpillar, and then this yellow thing that it changes into is the cocoon. So when we say that we're cocooned, we kind of mean that we're all wrapped up in something. Covered, but completely covered, and usually covered pretty tightly as well with something. The idea of cocooned is that idea of maybe being very comfortable in a place as well. So if you're cocooned inside, you imagine one of those little tiny little, I'm sure you've seen this in sci-fi movies, those little capsules that you're kind of in that are just kind of big enough for your body. It's not something that you would move around in very, very much. Yeah, kind of scary. This is why you're hibernating when you're inside. You're not so awake. I think if you were awake, you wouldn't want to be in that position. Okay. Any other questions here? Nadia, any other questions? Okay, rejuvenated. What does rejuvenated mean? I think this was a good test for everyone, Nadia. Yeah, look younger in a way. It's this idea of kind of like refreshing something. So when we talk about someone feeling rejuvenated, we're really talking about them feeling refreshed, feeling younger, maybe like they've got more energy, or that they feel like a kind of like a younger version of themselves. Yeah, it is pretty commonly used actually. You will especially hear this word used in kind of beauty treatments. So you will hear people use this when they're selling like beauty products or treatments, things like this. In daily conversation, you could probably use it like, oh, I feel so rejuvenated after that massage, like that. We can use it in that kind of way. It isn't so strange to use in like a daily conversation. Yeah, you see it a lot for face creams. You actually even see creams that are called rejuvenation creams. It's even the name of the cream itself. So it's used a lot in this kind of area. Yeah, I don't know how a lot of exactly the same kind of anti-aging. rejuvenating sounds a lot more positive than anti-aging sometimes. So they both get used basically for the same idea though. Okay. Anything else before we keep reading? Trope, right? With the E on the end. Okay. What is a trope? We use this word a lot when we're talking about books, about stories, about movies, TV series. It's used a lot in these kinds of circumstances. Not about the place or the saint. No. Any ideas? In the article, it said a trope of science fiction stories. Not about misanthropy as well. Okay, it looks like this is another question for me. So when we talk about a trope, we're talking about a theme that's very important, or a theme that appears all the time. So like kind of like a repeated theme or a repeated idea or some kind of repeated, a repeated idea in something. So when they say a trope of science fiction stories, they mean that this idea is found or it's repeated in a lot of science fiction stories. In fact, I think if you think of most of the ones that we have about going into outer space, this idea of like hibernating to be able to get to some place on outer space is a pretty common idea that they have in a lot of these movies. Yeah, a repeated idea, I think, is the best one to think about it. Okay, fantastic. Anything else before we keep going? Okay. Let's keep reading then. Fatma, would you like to read?
Yes, thank you, Natasha. If it were, it would be a boon for space exploration. A single astronaut consumes about 30 kilograms of food and water a week. Multiply that by the approximate 16 months if it would take to travel to Mars and back. And that adds up to a pretty hefty spaceship for all that life supports. Hibernating astronauts, on the other hand, wouldn't eat or drink much and would consume minimal oxygen. Hibernation could therefore save mission controllers a huge amount of money, reducing the amount of food cargo needed by 75% on the size of spacecraft needed by up to 1/3. There is also the psychological factors to consider. Hibernating astronauts wouldn't get bored, stressed, or lonely, and less time and space would be needed to help keep them fit or entertained. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at this part. Questions, comments?
Excuse me, Natasha, I didn't pronounce, I skipped the T6 LBS because I don't know how it is pronounced. And what does it mean?
Okay, good question.
Thank you.
Okay, so LBS. Let's see if anybody else knows first. What is LBS? What does it stand for? This is a little bit confusing because the word does not start with an L. That's the clue. Pounds. Constantine's got it. Yes. Not liters. Liters would just be is actually L. Big L, I think, for liters. Yeah. So LBS is actually pounds. And it's because I think in the past, pounds was actually called something like libras. That's where we get the L and the B and the S from. So it's very confusing, I know. But LBS is pounds. Exactly. Yep. And it's a unit to measure the weight. Yep. Pronounced pounds. Exactly. So if you see LBS written somewhere, you can say pounds. Very strange. I agree. It's very confusing. Okay. What about the rest of this section? Are there any other questions? Boon. Yes, sorry. I think you already asked that, right? When we talk about a boon, what is it? They said it would be a boon for space exploration. A benefit. Yep, exactly. When we talk about a boon, we talk about a benefit for something. And usually like something extra as well, something that's maybe not so expected. So it's like kind of like an added extra, an added benefit. Are there any other questions here? Is it common? Yes, maybe not so much in speaking, but I think in writing, when we talk about, I see it used a lot in kind of business things. They talk about a boon for the company or a boon for the country, or a boon for a certain group of people. So I think it is kind of used a lot in articles and reports in writing. No problem. I didn't know that it was a beer as well. There you go. Okay. Are there any other questions here? Constantine, any questions? No? Okay. Would you like to read?
Yes, thank you. And I'm not sure this we stop in this place. There is uncertainty. Yes,
Yeah,
there is. Thank you. There is uncertainty in how humans will react to the effect of no longer seeing Earth as a close-by planet out of the window and seeing only dark outside, says Leopold Sammerer, the head of the European Space Agency's ESA Advanced Concepts team, which keeps an eye on new space technologies. The psychological stress this may induce is a bit of an unknown. There would also be health benefits to hibernation. Without the force of gravity, astronauts in space experience muscle wastage and bone density loss, even at the International Space Station, where high-tech gym equipment is available 24/7 and strict exercise protocols and followed, astronauts lost up to 20% of their muscle mass. Muscle wastage would be even more of a problem on missions to Mars, as there would be no support crews waiting by after a landing on the red planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at this part. Questions, comments?
Excuse me, before I finished, how it should pronounce properly 24 and /7? Yes, or
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, the way that we usually pronounce this is we just usually ignore that slash or that that's kind of between them. So when we say this, we usually just say 24/7.
So it means 7 days and 24 hours, yes?
Exactly. Yep. It's kind of a short
Thank
form
you.
of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we kind of shorten it just to 24/7. Any other questions here? It looks like we're getting a little bit easier as we go with the article. I know that it gets a little bit more scientific later on though, so let's see if we get up to that part. There's no questions here. Let's keep reading to see if we can get to that part. Nadia, would you like to read again?
Yes. So from hibernation, right? Could protect.
Yes, that's it.
Hibernation could protect against some of these risks. Hibernating animals enter a special state called a torpor, whereby their metabolism slows and their heart rate, breathing, and body temperature fall. Even the cells that make up the animal's body stop dividing and dying. Torpor, which is different to sleep, allows animals to preserve energy at times of food scarcity. However, it also seems to protect against some of the harmful effects of space travel. For instance, squirrels have shown resistance to high levels of radiation while hibernating, possibly because hibernating cells replicate at much lower rates and are therefore naturally less susceptible to radiation damage. Entering a torpor-like state also seems to help bears and squirrels preserve their bone structure and muscle tone. Despite hibernating for up to 6 months at a time, black bears emerge in spring with only marginal muscle loss and are back to normal within 20 days. In fact, bears waking up from torpor show surprisingly high fitness levels. If you stayed in okay,
Sorry.
it's okay.
Let's take a look at this part. Questions, comments? Constantine?
Yes, thank you so much. And I would like to comment this part because it's amazing effect of torpor. As for me, I maybe gain from 5 to 10 kilograms of pure muscle mass. Then I was in torpor. Then I start to sleep more than 12 hours per day, and it takes more than year for me. So it's really maybe some magic effect, and then you sleep a lot, then you not active, so it is matter for your muscle and for your organism in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's why they're saying here that it's a little bit different from just sleep. That the whole body process kind of slows down. But yeah, humans definitely don't have this this power of torpor, at least not at the moment. Could be useful, I think, but currently we don't do it. So so torpor would be similar to stasis, exactly. This is what they're kind of talking about here. Because everything kind of slows down, everything kind of, like they said here, even the cells stop dividing and dying. So all those kind of processes kind of stop, or if they don't stop, go like really, really slowly. So this is the kind of idea that they're referring to, or that they're comparing it to. Any other questions here? Okay, let's keep going. Fatima, would you like to read again?
Yes, thank you. If you stayed in bed for several months, you would lose a great deal of muscle tissue over that time, says Weigen Bertel-Hahn, a professor of neuroscience and cell biology at Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany. Bertel-Hahn is a member of the ESA's hibernation research group, which conducts its research into human hibernation for long-distance spaceflight to Mars. This strong reduction of tissue during long periods of disuse is almost completely avoided during torpor, which means astronauts coming to Mars should be in good shape and shouldn't need a very long time to recover. Bears are also a good model for human hibernation because they only lower their body temperature by a few degrees, but still manage to reduce their metabolic rate considerably. Hibernating bears can also still function relatively normally during hibernation, with some females known to even wake up to give birth during this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. Questions, comments? Konstantin?
Could you please explain this part? So some female bear wake up to born some new teddy bear during the hibernation. It is possible?
Apparently so. Probably not teddy bears. I think black bears are a little bit more
Baby bear,
angry.
baby bear, yeah, baby bear, yeah.
Let's just say baby bears. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't try cuddling them.
they wake up to burn them, yes, and
Yeah,
continue to sleeping.
exactly.
Yes, amazing. Yes,
It is
clear.
amazing.
Thank you.
Yep. Was very shocking, actually. So yeah, it looks like the female bears, maybe that they're pregnant when they go into hibernation, and then it's kind of like, okay, it's time. So they wake up, give birth to the baby bear, and I don't know, maybe they go back into hibernation, maybe they stay awake, I don't know.
Maybe procrastinate to wake up, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it is fact, because in nature it's maybe not normal the period for born. It's maybe not uh, keep not. Not at the hibernation, so it's controlled by nature, this period, so I'm not sure it's true. So we have only to trust an article. I have to Google it later. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Remember as well that they have in the article, there's a link there to the actual, to the study that was done on this. So they actually do have a link here to the study that was done, to the research that was published, that that they did to find out that this is true. So that might be a good place to start if you want to research it a little bit more. But I'm pretty sure there'd be some humans that would be kind of happy to to maybe do some of this hibernation as well while they're pregnant. I can definitely know a few pregnant people that would be very, very happy to hibernate until the end of their pregnancy. Okay. Are there any other questions here before we keep reading? It is a pretty amazing photo, isn't it? It definitely makes the astronauts look a lot less fancy, right? Like, he kind of looks like he's in a hospital bed somewhere, you know, like a padded bed to not hurt himself a little bit. So, okay, maybe let's keep reading though. Konstantin, would you like to read again?
I'm not sure where we stop. It starts from cooling the body, yes?
The paragraph before, but enough.
But enough of the benefits. It is possible, well, maybe hibernating animals and distributed throughout the tree of life, including insects, amphibians, and many mammals. Studies have also shown that scientists can use drugs to induce a state of torpor in some animals, such as rats, that don't usually hibernate. The drugs act on a region of the brain called the hypothalamus, which is involved in regulating the body's temperature and heartbeat. Cooling the body down could also initiate a kind of torpor-like state in the 1990s, researchers from the Safar Center of Resuscitation Research at the University of Pittsburgh showed that rapidly cooling the circulatory system of dogs in cardiac arrest sent them into a state of suspended animation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part. Questions, comments? Okay, resuscitation. Any idea what resuscitation might be? To relive something? I get the idea, yes, but you'd probably say to bring something back to life. Yeah, like what doctors do. So when we think about resuscitation, we usually think about two things. Like if you think about like medical dramas, one is like CPR. No, actually, that's one thing that covers both. CPR, which involves like, you know, they press down on the heart to get the heart restarted again, and also to restart the breathing as well. So resuscitation is kind of like bringing back somebody to life when they've kind of stopped. So let me double check, because I just want to make sure that resuscitation isn't just about breathing. I don't think it is, but I want to double check. No, okay. So it's kind of bringing somebody back to life again. So if their heart stops or their breathing stops, it's basically getting those two things back working again. Okay, I had to count. I would say there's 5 syllables there, but some of them are pretty quick syllables. So resuscitation, resuscitation. Okay, great. Any other questions in this part? Okay, cardiac arrest. What is cardiac arrest? What's maybe another way to say it? Yep, cardiac arrest is when the heart stops beating. So sometimes we might say a heart attack as well. But cardiac arrest is just when the heart stops beating. Okay, great. Let's read a little bit more then. Do I have a volunteer to read again? I'm not sure if we'll have time for everybody to read again or not. Fatima, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Natasha. I'm not sure from where is from similar process.
Yes, that's it.
Thank you. A similar process known as therapeutic hypothermia is already used in some hospitals to treat patients in cardiac arrest or with traumatic brain injuries. It's thought that cooling the body down to around 32 to 34 Celsius 89.6 to 93.2 Fahrenheit, I think. Reduces damage to the brain and other vital organs. This makes sense as the cells in our body require a constant supply of oxygen to meet their metabolic demands. Under normal circumstances, the heart pumps this oxygen around our body. But in trauma patients, the loss of blood causes cells to run out of oxygen and quickly die. Cooling the body down by a few degrees reduces the body's demand for energy and oxygen, buying physicians important time. SpaceWorks Enterprises, an aerospace engineering based in Atlanta, Georgia, believes that therapeutic hypnothermia could also be a good way of placing space travelers into a synthetic torpor. The firm has received funding from NASA to flesh out its idea, which would see astronauts placed in compact pod where they would enter a 2-week stint of extended hibernation before being active for a couple of days and then going back into stasis again. This could be done on rotation so that there would always be a member of the crew awake, addressing safety concerns or any emergencies that might occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at this part. Any questions here? Okay, to flesh out its idea. If you flesh out something, what are you doing? Has anyone heard this before? Flesh is the part of the body, exactly. What part of the body is flesh? The meat, yes. So usually when we talk about flesh, we talk about like flesh and bones, okay? So the flesh is kind of like all the soft part, you know, the meat, the skin, and then we've got the bones. And you can think about it this way. The bone is kind of like the basic structure, right? It's like the basic framework of something. The flesh is like all those details, all the extra things, all those extra parts there that you put on top of the basic structure. So exactly, when we talk about fleshing out an idea, what we mean is kind of adding in those extra details. So it's not just about having like the basic formula or the basic format of something. That would be like the bones. If you think about the body, you're fleshing out, you're kind of adding those extra details, adding those extra elements that you would need for something to actually work. So developing it in a way. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think it kind of helps if you think about, because we use this idea when we're developing something, right? So I think it even helps to kind of think about, for example, a skeleton. If you add flesh to that skeleton, you kind of create what the body is supposed to look like, right? So you kind of add things to that skeleton and think of the skeleton as a frame. So we've got the skeleton as the frame and the flesh is like the details that you add to that frame, so that you've got something that's fully developed, that's completely developed. I think that can be helpful to remember this one. Yeah, provide more details, exactly. Any other questions here? Yeah, actually, this other phrase as well. It's another idiom that we use, which has this similar kind of idea to separate the flesh from the bones. Because when we talk about separating flesh from the bones, obviously in a figurative way, we're not cannibals. We're talking about, separating the details from that important parts, the basic details, the basic idea of something. So it's kind of taking away those extra details maybe from the most important parts of something. It is very scientific, right? We kind of went from science fiction ideas into more science ideas. Okay, I think we've got time to read maybe one more part. So do I have another volunteer to read again? You can only nominate yourself. Nadia, go ahead.
Okay, actually, I was waiting. I said Constantine will put mic. So I said, let me wait. And then, okay, I will start. Sorry. There are a number of different approaches to how you could cool someone down and lower their metabolism, says John Bradford, Spaceworks CEO. In clinical settings, they use intravenous cold saline injections that cool your body down and put ice packs on, but that would be too invasive and not very practical for a spaceflight. One option is to feed cooling nitrogen gas to astronauts via a nasal cannula. The gas would lower body temperature from 37.5 Celsius (99.5 Fahrenheit) to around 32 Celsius (89.6 Fahrenheit), which would cut metabolic activity by about 50%. Thank you.
Would you like to keep going a little bit more or just the next two paragraphs?
Yes. I lost. We are also looking at other techniques such as using ambient air cooling to cool down the habitat and then using a light sedative to relax the astronaut, says Bradford. Thank you.
Okay, let's have a look at this part here. Questions, comments? Okay, sedative. What is a sedative? Yeah, to kind of make you sleep. It doesn't necessarily have to make you sleep, but it does make you slow. So a sedative kind of like slows everything down. It's often used to, for example, maybe to calm people down, or in certain medical procedures to kind of like calm you down so that you may not technically be asleep, but you're definitely kind of very relaxed. Yep, it's a medicine. Exactly. Okay, intravenous. Any ideas? Maybe this is a question for you, Nadia, because it looks like Constantine and Fatma had the same question. Intravenous. Any ideas? Yeah, it's related to the vein, right? This is where we've got this venous on the end. So intravenous means it's inside your vein. So yeah, this is why they talked about the cannula in your vein. Does everybody know what a cannula is? You've probably, actually, I would say you've definitely seen this in some of those like medical shows. Okay. Yeah, it's that kind of special tube. Exactly. So this picture isn't so bad. Yep, they use it to give medicine. Sometimes it might be the saline solution or something else. But it's that little thin tube that they usually attach to the vein in your arm. I chose this one because it doesn't actually show where it's attached because I don't know about other people, but I don't like seeing that so much. So I don't want to make anybody else look at it either. Okay. Any other questions here? Yeah, these are the kinds of things that the doctor or the nurse like wants you to look at, and you're like, no, just do what you need to do. I don't need to see it. I don't need to watch. I trust you. You know what you're doing. I don't. Okay. So we might stop here for today, but we got pretty close to the end. So if you're interested, I would recommend maybe reading a little bit more. They talk a bit more about the fact that we need a bit more research to know exactly how some of these hibernation works, to make sure that we don't kind of accidentally cause any problems. And they talk about another test that was done, I think, with hamsters to see the kind of effects that they had when they were put in hibernation using some of these techniques. So let's talk about this more on Thursday. I'm interested to know what you think about this, whether this is something that you would do, if you think this is likely to happen in the future. Maybe we can talk about some of the pros and cons of the hibernation. So let's talk about all of that on Thursday, okay? Thank you all very much, and hopefully talk to you all again soon. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.